Now we've got our camera, we've loaded it, now it's time to start using it. Now this is among my favorite parts of Polaroid photography, because you actually get to start taking pictures. So that's always exciting. Let's begin with the basics. Now I'm going to give you the gist of this camera, starting with it at its kind of, I would say, relaxed state. So we would close it up first to get that. And to help me with this, I've set up the human analog because I'm all by myself today. It's really, I think it's a really good realistic human. Yeah, that looks good, right? Okay, so that'll be our subject. We're going to take a picture of this happy fellow, and let's start by just getting a feel for this camera. There's a lot of things on it. I'm going to show you every piece of it that you need to know to learn how to take pictures with it. So we're going to get out of first person mode because it's just impractical to do that, but I am going to give you a full rundown of all the features. What you want to do is first start by flipping up the viewfinder, because that's a little attachment on top. Then you want to look at the camera straight on, and there's a little lift right here by the focus button. So you just lift that up a little bit, the camera should pop out on its own, then you can just take it with your fingers and pull it all the way out till it clicks. Next thing we want to do is set the film speed and make sure it's appropriately set. That is done by looking on the front of the camera. There's a little dial right underneath where it says Polaroid, and that dial you can actually turn with your finger from any of the numbers, 75, 150, 3000, 300, and once you have the film speed selected, in this case 3000 because we're shooting on the black and white 3000 speed stock, you are pretty much good to go except for this little yellow button right here. Now that triggers the aperture on the lens. So if it's bright out, it'll lower the aperture to keep the light from overexposing, and if it's kind of dim, you can open the aperture to keep it brighter. You can see on the top where it says, like for instance, we're shooting black and white, and as you can see here, we're taking it from outdoors or flash, because we are not outdoors, nor are we using a flash, to indoors without flash. That's how we're going to shoot this. Now that means focus is a little more critical because the aperture is wide open, so let's focus it. The first thing you want to do is look in the smaller viewfinder, and by the way, you could have a newer camera that has a Zeiss rangefinder, which means there is no smaller viewfinder, it's all one image, but the focusing principles still apply. So what you want to do is look through the tiny viewfinder and you'll see two images on the screen. Move the focus knob back and forth, left and right, until the two images line up and there only looks to be one image. That is rangefinder focusing, and it's very intuitive once you get the feel for it. So it's just moving it left, right. You can see the distance scale if you look at the actual top of the focusing knob. You have one person, two people, landscape. So the further you push it, the further it'll focus. So as you can see here, we've got it focused just about right. There we go. Everything looks to be good. Now I can move my eye over to the other viewfinder right here, and I can focus and frame him up. Now it's important to know that when you're shooting a close picture, as close as you can focus, which is maybe 3 feet or so, you want to kind of adjust the framing a little bit, because if you don't, it'll misframe the picture, because what you're seeing is actually not what you're taking with the camera. The rangefinder viewfinder on top of the camera is slightly higher than the lens. As a result, you want to kind of give all your subjects, if you're shooting close-up shots of people, a little more headroom than you think they need. So essentially, if you're really close as focusing you can, put their head right in the center of the frame. Just if they're close, try to frame them a little bit more headroom. Now there is one more control you have over the camera's exposure, and that is on the front of it, right underneath the lens on the dial. It's this little control that says lighten or darken, and it's just like it sounds. If you feel that your picture might be overexposed and you want to knock it back, turn the dial to darken. If you think it's going to be underexposed for some reason, maybe your subject is backlit and it's not going to look appropriate, then you want to adjust the dial to lighten. That's basically it. That's going to fix all the problems you may have. It's fun to experiment. I found for the most part the Polaroid camera gets it really right, so I wouldn't worry too much about adjusting that. Leave it at the neutral position. As long as you've set your film speed correctly in that dial underneath, you're going to be just fine. Then we're ready to essentially take our picture. So what we want to do is cock the shutter, and you didn't want to do that until just now because you could accidentally take a picture without being ready. And then you put your finger right over the big red button with the 2 on it, and there you go. It's important if you're inside and the light's not maybe so great that you really hold the camera steady. And typically you do that by grabbing it with 2 hands, putting both elbows into your chest, and holding it very tightly against your face as you take the picture. That'll help prevent additional shakes. And now that we have our picture exposed, we go ahead and pull the little white tab out, and then we have the black tab, the larger one. You want to pull that straight out in one motion, just like this. And now we wait. So that concludes this chapter of Get a Polaroid, and now you've shot your image. Tune in next time where we learn how to process the image. Don't worry, it's a very easy step.